You're scrolling through your phone, catching up on the latest posts, and there it is, someone's perfect vacation, their new promotion, their seemingly flawless life. For a moment, you feel a pang of something, envy, maybe, or dissatisfaction. It's subtle, but it's there, and suddenly, your day feels a little less bright. Sound familiar? This is the trap of comparison, and it's something the Stoics warned us about centuries ago. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Yet, how often do we let comparison rob us of that present joy? We measure ourselves against others, forgetting that our worth isn't determined by someone else's accomplishments or possessions. The Stoics understood this deeply, and their wisdom offers a powerful antidote to the modern habit of comparison. In this video, we'll explore why the Stoics believed comparison is the thief of joy, and how their principles of detachment, self-awareness, and focusing on what's within our control can help us reclaim it. Together, we'll uncover how to break free from the endless cycle of measuring ourselves against others and find contentment in our own journey. So, if you've ever felt the weight of comparison holding you back, this is for you. Let's dive in. Why do we feel this constant pull to measure ourselves against others? It's a question that has echoed through centuries, and yet it feels more relevant today than ever. From a Stoic perspective, comparison isn't just a fleeting thought, it's a mental habit, one that pulls us away from the inner peace we're striving to cultivate. Think about it, when we compare ourselves to someone else, what are we really doing? We're placing value on external markers, someone else's success, appearance, or possessions, and using them as a yardstick for our own worth. But here's the thing, the Stoics would argue that this habit is fundamentally at odds with their core philosophy of self-sufficiency. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it plainly, "What's up to us are our own opinions, desires, and aversions. What's not up to us are things like wealth, reputation, and power, external things that lie beyond our control." When we compare ourselves to others, we're essentially handing over our sense of worth to these external factors. We're saying, my happiness depends on how I stack up against this person or that standard. But the Stoics remind us that true contentment comes from focusing on what's within our control, our thoughts, our actions, and our character. Let's bring this into the modern world for a moment. Imagine scrolling through social media and seeing a friend announce a promotion. Suddenly, you start questioning your own career path, your achievements, your progress. But here's the truth, that comparison isn't about them, it's about you. It's about the story you're telling yourself about what success should look like. The Stoics would encourage you to pause and ask, why does their success diminish mine? Why am I giving their journey the power to define my own? Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you caught yourself comparing? Maybe it was about your career, your relationships, or even your personal growth. What would it feel like to let go of that habit, even just a little? To shift your focus inward to what you can control rather than what you can't. This isn't about dismissing ambition or ignoring the world around us. It's about reclaiming your peace of mind. Because when we stop measuring ourselves against others, we start living by our own standards, and that's where true freedom begins. Success, as the world defines it, is not the key to joy. The Stoics understood this deeply, and their philosophy offers a refreshing perspective on what it means to truly thrive. They believed that external achievements, wealth, fame, status, or even social recognition are what they called preferred indifference. These are things we might naturally desire, but they are ultimately indifferent to our happiness because they are outside of our control. Comparing ourselves to others based on these external markers, the Stoics would argue, is not only futile but also a direct path to dissatisfaction. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This might sound intense, but it's a reminder of the impermanence of worldly achievements. No matter how much wealth or status we accumulate, none of it lasts forever. And yet, so many of us spend our lives chasing these fleeting markers of success, only to find ourselves feeling empty once we attain them. Think about someone who spends years climbing the corporate ladder, finally reaching the top, only to realize they're no happier than they were before. Or consider the person who chases social media fame, accumulating followers and likes, yet still feels a void inside. These examples aren't meant to shame ambition or success. Stoics aren't against striving for external goals. Instead, they encourage us to ask ourselves what truly matters. Is it the external validation, or is it the internal peace and character we cultivate along the way? The Stoics invite us to shift our focus inward. Instead of measuring ourselves against others' achievements, they suggest we ask, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I growing in wisdom, courage, and self-discipline? These are the qualities that lead to lasting fulfillment, not the trophies or accolades we collect. When we stop comparing our journey to someone else's, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of chasing external validation and begin to discover what truly brings us joy. So, the next time you find yourself envying someone else's success, pause and reflect. Are you valuing what truly matters, or are you caught in the illusion of external achievements? The Stoics remind us that the key to joy isn't found in what we accumulate, it's found in who we become. Imagine being in a room surrounded by people who seem to have it all: success, wealth, admiration. You might feel a pang of envy, a quiet ache that whispers, "Why not me?" This feeling, as ancient as humanity itself, has been dissected by philosophers for centuries. Seneca, the Stoic sage, once wrote about envy with a piercing clarity, calling it a disease of the soul. He observed how it consumes us, not because others have more, but because we allow our focus to drift away from what we already possess. Envy, in its essence, is the shadow cast by comparison, a shadow that dims the light of our own joy. When we compare ourselves to others, we often fixate on what we lack rather than what we have. It's like staring at someone else's garden while ignoring the flowers blooming in our own. Seneca warned that envy is a thief, not just of joy, but of perspective. It blinds us to our own progress, our strengths, and the unique path we're meant to walk. The Stoics believed that true contentment comes from appreciating what's within our control, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, rather than longing for what lies beyond it. So, how do we break free from the trap of envy? The Stoics offer a powerful antidote: gratitude. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we don't have to what we do. It's a practice of acknowledging the abundance already present in our lives, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself to look within and find peace in the simplicity of his own existence. By cultivating gratitude, we disarm envy and reclaim our joy. Here's a thought to sit with. What would your life look like if you stopped envying others and instead poured that energy into your own growth? Picture a version of yourself free from the weight of comparison, fully present in your journey, and deeply grateful for the opportunities you have. That's the Stoic vision of a life well lived, a life where joy isn't stolen by envy but nurtured by a mindset of abundance. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound idea is at the heart of the Stoic practice of detachment, learning to let go of our attachment to outcomes we can't control. Think about it. When we tie our happiness or self-worth to external results, whether it's likes on a post, promotions at work, or even how others perceive us, we set ourselves up for emotional turmoil. The moment those outcomes don't align with our expectations, we feel disappointment, frustration, or even envy. But Stoicism offers a different path, the power of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean we stop caring or striving for what we want. Instead, it's about recalibrating our focus. It's about recognizing that while we can influence certain aspects of our lives, much of what happens around us is beyond our control. Take social media, for example. You can pour hours into creating a post, but you can't control how many people will engage with it. If you're constantly checking notifications, comparing your engagement to others, or feeling deflated when the numbers don't meet your hopes, you're giving power to something outside yourself. Detachment in this context means saying, "I'll do my best, but I won't let the outcome define me." This practice isn't just about social media. It applies to nearly every area of life. Imagine working hard on a project at work, only to have it overlooked or criticized. Detachment allows you to focus on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, and your growth. The rest, it's not yours to hold onto. By embracing this mindset, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of comparison and external validation. You start to find peace in the effort itself rather than the result. So, how can you start practicing detachment? Begin by reflecting on what's truly within your control. Make a list if it helps. Your actions, your choices, your responses, these are your domain. Everything else, let it go. This doesn't mean you stop aiming high or caring deeply. It means you stop letting the uncontrollable dictate your happiness. When you detach from outcomes, you reclaim your joy, and that's a power no one can take from you. How often do you catch yourself scrolling through social media, comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel? It's easy to get lost in what others have achieved, what they've acquired, or how they seem to be living their best lives. But here's the thing: Stoicism offers a powerful antidote to this habit, the practice of focusing on the present moment. When we anchor ourselves in the here and now, we stop measuring our worth against others and start appreciating what's right in front of us. At the heart of this Stoic principle is the concept of amor fati, a Latin phrase that means love of fate. It's about embracing every moment, whether good or bad, as an essential part of your journey. Instead of resisting or resenting what's happening right now, amor fati teaches us to accept it fully and find meaning in it. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, put it beautifully when he said, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." In other words, the present moment is all we truly have, and it's where our power lies. Think about it. When you're fully present, you're not worried about what someone else has accomplished or where you think you should be. You're focused on what you can do right now to move forward, even if it's just a small step. For example, instead of comparing your fitness journey to someone else's progress, you might focus on completing today's workout with intention and gratitude. Or instead of stressing about where your career should be, you could ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today to grow my skills or improve my situation? This shift in focus isn't just about avoiding comparison, it's about cultivating contentment. When we stop measuring our lives against others, we start noticing the richness of our own experiences. We begin to see that joy isn't something we have to chase in the future or resent missing out on in the past. It's here, right now, in the small, everyday moments we often overlook. So take a moment to reflect. How often do you truly live in the present? Are there areas of your life where you've been too focused on what others are doing rather than what you're doing yourself? The Stoics remind us that the present is where life happens, and it's where we have the power to choose how we respond. By embracing amor fati and focusing on the here and now, we can break free from the trap of comparison and find a deeper sense of peace and purpose. To stop comparing ourselves to others, we must first understand ourselves. This is where self-awareness comes in, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believed that true freedom from comparison begins with knowing who we are, what we value, and where we're headed. As Seneca once wrote, "Examine yourself, scrutinize yourself, and then judge yourself." This isn't about harsh self-criticism, it's about honest reflection. When we take the time to look inward, we start to see why we're drawn to comparison in the first place. Is it insecurity, a lack of direction, or simply a habit we've picked up along the way? Self-awareness helps us align our actions with our deeper values. Instead of chasing after what others have or what society tells us to want, we can focus on what truly matters to us. Imagine someone who constantly compares their career progress to their peers. They might feel stuck or inadequate, always measuring their worth by someone else's standards. But through self-awareness, they begin to ask themselves, what do I actually want from my career? Am I pursuing this path because it fulfills me or because I'm trying to keep up? By shifting their focus inward, they can set goals that reflect their own passions and strengths, rather than living in the shadow of someone else's achievements. This kind of introspection doesn't just free us from comparison, it empowers us to live more authentically. When we know ourselves deeply, we're less likely to be swayed by external validation or societal pressures. We become the authors of our own lives, writing our stories with intention rather than reacting to the noise around us. So, how can self-awareness help you break free from comparison? Take a moment to reflect. What are your core values? What do you truly want to achieve? When you focus on these questions, the urge to compare starts to lose its grip. You begin to see that your journey is unique, and that's where your strength lies. The Stoics remind us that the only person you should ever compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. And that's a comparison worth making. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature that still resonates today. The relentless pursuit of perfection is a losing battle. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." At first glance, this might seem harsh, but it's a reminder that life is fleeting, and spending it chasing an impossible ideal is a waste of the time we have. The Stoics believed that perfection is not only unattainable but also unnecessary. Instead, they taught us to focus on progress, not perfection, and to embrace our imperfections as part of what makes us human. Take Epictetus, for example. He famously said, "No great thing is created suddenly." This simple yet powerful statement cuts to the heart of why comparison and perfectionism are so destructive. When we compare ourselves to others, we're often measuring our messy, unfinished lives against someone else's highlight reel. And in doing so, we forget that even the people we admire most have their own struggles and flaws. The Stoics weren't interested in presenting a flawless image to the world. They were focused on living with virtue, authenticity, and resilience. They understood that chasing perfection only leads to frustration, because no matter how much we achieve, there will always be something or someone that seems better. Now think about how this plays out in our modern world. Social media, for instance, has created a culture where we're constantly bombarded with curated images of perfect lives. The flawless vacations, the ideal relationships, the endless achievements. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that everyone else has it all together while we're falling short. But here's the truth: what we see online is rarely the full picture. It's a carefully edited version of reality, designed to impress rather than reflect. And when we compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, we set ourselves up for disappointment. So, what's the alternative? The Stoics would urge us to shift our focus. Instead of striving to be perfect, strive to be better, not better than others, but better than the person you were yesterday. Embrace your flaws as opportunities for growth, not as reasons to feel inadequate. After all, it's through our imperfections that we learn, adapt, and become stronger. The next time you catch yourself comparing your life to someone else's, ask yourself this: am I chasing perfection or am I embracing progress? Because in the end, it's not about being flawless, it's about being fully human. What if true success wasn't about the trophies on your shelf or the titles on your resume, but about the kind of person you are? This is the heart of Stoic philosophy, the idea that inner virtue, not external achievements, defines a life well lived. The Stoics believed that no matter what happens in the world around us, our character remains the one thing we can truly control. And if we focus on cultivating virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice, we unlock a deeper, more enduring kind of fulfillment. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it this way: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. It's a powerful reminder that the measure of our lives isn't found in what others think of us, but in the choices we make and the principles we uphold. For the Stoics, success wasn't about being better than someone else, it was about being better than the person you were yesterday. Let's bring this to life with an example. Think about someone you admire not for their wealth or fame, but for their integrity. Maybe it's a teacher who inspired you, a friend who always shows up when it matters, or even a historical figure who stood firm in their values despite immense pressure. These are the people who embody Stoic virtue. They don't chase external validation or compare themselves to others. Instead, they focus on what's within their control: their actions, their mindset, their moral compass. And in doing so, they find a sense of purpose that no trophy or title could ever provide. So, what about you? When you think about your own life, what virtues matter most to you? Is it the courage to face challenges head-on, the wisdom to make thoughtful decisions? Or perhaps the commitment to treat others with fairness and respect? The Stoics would argue that these qualities are the true markers of success, not because they earn you applause, but because they shape who you are. And in the end, that's what truly matters. Picture this: you're at a social gathering, surrounded by people sharing their latest achievements, new jobs, promotions, or even personal milestones like buying a home or traveling the world. At first, it feels inspiring, but as the conversations continue, a subtle unease creeps in. You start to wonder, why haven't I accomplished as much? Why does their success make me feel so small? This is the trap of social comparison, and it's one of the most pervasive challenges we face in today's interconnected world. The Stoics understood this danger centuries ago. They recognized that our environments, whether it's a party, social media, or even the company we keep, can act as fuel for comparison, feeding our insecurities and pulling us away from our own path. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it plainly: associate with people who are likely to improve you. In other words, our surroundings and the people we interact with have a profound impact on our mindset. If we're constantly surrounded by those who trigger envy or self-doubt, we're setting ourselves up for unnecessary suffering. So, what's the antidote? The Stoics suggest being intentional about the environments we expose ourselves to. This doesn't mean avoiding all social interactions or cutting people out of your life. It's about being selective. Think about the people who uplift you, who inspire you to grow without making you feel less than. These are the influences worth cultivating. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're part of a group that often discusses material success, luxury cars, designer clothes, or exotic vacations. While there's nothing inherently wrong with these topics, they might not align with your values or goals. Over time, this environment could lead to feelings of inadequacy or pressure to measure up. The Stoic approach would be to seek out or create spaces where growth, wisdom, and authenticity are celebrated instead. Now, here's a question to reflect on. How does your current environment shape your tendency to compare? Are there places, people, or even online spaces that leave you feeling drained or discouraged? The Stoics would argue that life is too short to waste energy on comparisons that don't serve you. By consciously choosing where you spend your time and who you surround yourself with, you take control of your inner peace. It's not about isolating yourself or pretending that others' achievements don't matter. It's about creating a space where you can thrive on your own terms. After all, as Seneca reminds us, the quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our influences. So, what kind of influences are you inviting into your world? Epictetus once said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of Stoic gratitude, a practice that can transform how we see ourselves and the world around us. When we're caught in the cycle of comparison, it's easy to fixate on what we lack, whether it's a better job, a bigger house, or a more exciting life. But gratitude flips the script. It redirects our attention to what we already have, grounding us in the present moment and reminding us of the abundance that's already ours. Imagine this: instead of scrolling through social media and feeling that pang of envy as you see someone's highlight reel, you take a moment to write down 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face, the sound of a loved one's laughter, or even the simple fact that you have a roof over your head. This practice, often called a gratitude journal, isn't just a modern self-help trend. It's a practical tool rooted in Stoic wisdom. By consciously acknowledging what we appreciate, we train our minds to focus on what's good and meaningful in our lives, rather than obsessing over what we think we're missing. Gratitude doesn't mean ignoring life's challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about finding value and beauty even in the midst of imperfection. When we cultivate this mindset, the urge to compare diminishes. Why? Because comparison thrives on the illusion that others have it better, that their lives are somehow more complete or successful. Gratitude shatters that illusion, revealing that our own lives are filled with moments, relationships, and opportunities worth celebrating. So, take a moment to reflect. What are you grateful for today? It could be something big, like a recent accomplishment, or something small, like the taste of your morning coffee. Notice how this shift in focus changes how you feel. Does it soften the edges of envy or frustration? Does it remind you that your journey is uniquely yours, not a race to keep up with someone else's? Gratitude isn't just a feel-good exercise. It's a Stoic discipline that helps us reclaim our joy and live with greater contentment. Comparison thrives when we focus on what we can't control. It's a trap that pulls us into an endless cycle of dissatisfaction as we measure ourselves against others in areas where we have no real power. The Stoics called this the Dichotomy of Control, a foundational idea that separates what is within our power from what lies beyond it, what's within our control. Our thoughts, actions, and choices. What isn't the opinions of others, external circumstances, and even the natural course of life? When we compare ourselves to others, whether it's their success, their looks, or their lifestyle, we're often fixating on things we cannot change. And therein lies the problem. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Think about that for a moment. How much of our mental energy is spent worrying about things we can't influence? Comparing our appearance to someone else's, for example, is a futile exercise. Genetics, societal beauty standards, even the way others perceive us, these are all external factors. We can't rewrite our DNA or force the world to see us in a certain way. But what we can do is focus on how we care for ourselves, how we treat others, and how we choose to perceive our own worth. That's where true power lies. Let's take a step back and reflect. When was the last time you caught yourself comparing your life to someone else's? Maybe it was scrolling through social media, seeing a friend's promotion, or even noticing someone's seemingly perfect relationship. Now ask yourself, what part of that comparison was within your control? The answer, more often than not, is very little. The Stoics remind us that trying to control the uncontrollable only leads to frustration. But when we shift our focus to what we can influence, our efforts, our attitudes, our responses, we reclaim our peace of mind. This isn't about giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. It's about redirecting our energy where it truly matters. Instead of wasting time envying someone else's achievements, we can channel that energy into our own growth. Instead of feeling defeated by what we lack, we can appreciate what we have and work toward what we value. The Stoic dichotomy of control isn't just a philosophical concept, it's a practical tool for living a more intentional, less comparative life. And when we embrace it, we start to see that joy isn't something we find by measuring up to others. It's something we create by focusing on what's truly ours to shape. How can we stay strong when it feels like everyone around us has it all? The answer lies in one of the core principles of Stoicism, resilience. The Stoics believed that resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build piece by piece through adversity and self-discipline. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." What he's reminding us is that challenges aren't roadblocks, they're opportunities to grow stronger, to refine our character, and to deepen our understanding of what truly matters. Think about it this way: when we compare ourselves to others, we're often measuring our lives against a highlight reel. We see their successes, their possessions, their seemingly perfect lives, and it's easy to feel like we're falling short. But what we don't see are the struggles behind the scenes, the failures, the doubts, the moments of hardship that everyone faces. The Stoics teach us to shift our focus inward, to ask ourselves not, "Why don't I have what they have?" but "How can I grow from where I am right now?" This mindset doesn't just protect us from the sting of comparison, it empowers us to thrive in the face of it. Consider the story of someone who faced constant comparison but chose to rise above it. Take, for example, an athlete who was always told they weren't as talented as their peers. Instead of letting that define them, they channeled that criticism into relentless self-improvement. They trained harder, studied their craft, and focused on their own progress rather than measuring themselves against others. Over time, they didn't just match their peers, they surpassed them. That's the power of resilience. It's not about being the best, it's about being your best regardless of what's happening around you. So, how do we cultivate this kind of resilience in our own lives? Start by embracing challenges as opportunities for growth. When you feel the weight of comparison pressing down, remind yourself that your journey is yours alone. Focus on what you can control: your effort, your attitude, your commitment to self-improvement. And when you stumble, as we all do, don't see it as a failure. See it as a chance to learn, to adapt, and to come back stronger. Take a moment to reflect. When have you faced comparison and found the strength to rise above it? What did that experience teach you about your own resilience? The Stoics remind us that we're far more capable than we often give ourselves credit for. By building resilience, we not only withstand the pressures of comparison, we transform them into stepping stones for our own growth. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This simple yet profound idea is at the heart of Stoic contentment, a practice that shifts our focus from chasing external validation to appreciating what we already have. The Stoics believed that true happiness doesn't come from accumulating more, but from recognizing when we have enough. And in a world that constantly pushes us to want more money, more status, more stuff, this mindset is both radical and liberating. Think about it. How often do we measure our success or happiness by comparing ourselves to others? Maybe it's the neighbor with the bigger house, the co-worker with the flashy car, or the influencer with the picture-perfect life. But Stoicism teaches us that this kind of comparison is a trap. It's a never-ending cycle that leaves us feeling perpetually unsatisfied. Instead, the Stoics encourage us to define what enough means for ourselves. It's about stripping away the noise of societal expectations and finding peace in simplicity. Let's take a modern example: the growing trend of downsizing. More and more people are choosing to live in smaller homes, own fewer possessions, and focus on experiences rather than material wealth. This isn't just a practical decision, it's a philosophical one. By intentionally choosing less, they're embracing a Stoic principle that contentment comes from within, not from external abundance. It's a powerful reminder that we don't need to keep up with anyone else's standards to feel fulfilled. So, what does enough look like for you? Is it having a roof over your head, food on the table, and meaningful relationships? Or is it something deeper, like a sense of purpose or inner peace? The Stoics would argue that once you define what's truly essential, the pressure to compare yourself to others starts to fade. You begin to see that happiness isn't about having more, it's about needing less. It's about finding richness in the present moment rather than chasing an elusive future. This practice of contentment isn't about settling or giving up ambition. It's about shifting your perspective. When you focus on what's enough, you free yourself from the endless pursuit of validation. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's yardstick and start living by your own values. And in doing so, you reclaim something priceless, your peace of mind. Isn't that worth more than any material possession? Picture Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic philosophers, standing on the edge of a Roman battlefield. Around him, the chaos of war unfolds, men shouting, swords clashing, the weight of an empire resting on his shoulders. And yet, in his private writings, he often turned his thoughts to the vastness of time. He would remind himself that in the grand scheme of the universe, even the mightiest empires rise and fall like waves in an endless ocean. Why? Because perspective for the Stoics was a powerful tool to dissolve the grip of comparison. When we zoom out and see life through a wider lens, the things we compare ourselves to, whether it's someone else's success, possessions, or status, begin to lose their weight. Think about it. In 100 years or even 1,000, will anyone remember the car you drove, the job title you held, or the number of followers you had? Probably not. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He often wrote about the fleeting nature of human achievements, urging himself to focus not on what others had but on his own ability to live virtuously and with purpose. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a practical shift in mindset. Instead of seeing setbacks or challenges as reasons to compare ourselves to others, Stoics encourage us to view them as opportunities. Think of a setback, maybe a job rejection or a failed project. At first, it might feel like a blow to your self-worth, especially if you're comparing yourself to someone who seems to have it all together. But what if you reframed it? What if that rejection became a chance to grow, to learn, to build resilience? That's the Stoic approach, seeing every obstacle not as a reason to feel lesser, but as a stepping stone to becoming stronger. Here's a simple exercise. The next time you find yourself caught in the trap of comparison, take a moment to step back. Ask yourself, how will this matter in a year? In 5 years, in the grand scheme of my life? When you shift your perspective to the bigger picture, the things you once envied or felt inadequate about often shrink in importance. So, what's one area of your life where you've been comparing yourself to others? Could you reframe that experience as an opportunity for growth or a reminder of your own unique path? Perspective isn't just a way to minimize comparison, it's a tool to reclaim your focus, your peace, and your sense of purpose. And that's something no amount of comparison can ever take away. What if, instead of seeing ourselves as competitors, we began to see ourselves as part of something much larger? This shift in perspective is at the heart of humility, a virtue the Stoics held in the highest regard. Humility isn't about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. It's the quiet recognition that we are all part of a shared human experience, each of us learning, growing, and stumbling in our own way. And when we embrace this mindset, the need to compare ourselves to others begins to fade. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, warned about the dangers of pride, calling it a barrier to wisdom. He believed that pride blinds us to our own limitations, trapping us in a cycle of envy and dissatisfaction. When we're consumed by pride, we're constantly measuring ourselves against others, always seeking validation or superiority. But humility, Seneca argued, frees us from this trap. It allows us to see ourselves clearly, not as better or worse than others, but as works in progress. Consider the story of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. Despite holding immense power, he never let it inflate his ego. Instead, he practiced humility daily, reminding himself in his personal writings that he was no different from anyone else. He saw his role as one of service, not superiority. This humility allowed him to lead with wisdom and compassion, avoiding the pitfalls of comparison that often plague those in positions of power. His life serves as a powerful example of how humility can bring peace, even in the most challenging circumstances. So, how might humility transform your own relationship with comparison? Imagine what it would feel like to let go of the need to prove yourself, to step back from the endless race of who has more, who is better, who is ahead. Humility invites us to focus on our own journey, to measure our progress not against others, but against who we were yesterday. It's a quiet rebellion against the noise of comparison, a way to find contentment in simply being yourself. Take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could humility help you rise above the urge to compare? What would it look like to approach your goals, relationships, and challenges with a deeper sense of groundedness? When we stop competing and start connecting, we not only free ourselves from the weight of comparison, we also open the door to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But what if we flipped that idea for a moment? What if we treated ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we often reserve for others? This is the essence of self-compassion, a powerful Stoic practice that helps us break free from the trap of comparison. When we're constantly measuring ourselves against others, we risk falling into a cycle of self-doubt and dissatisfaction. But self-compassion invites us to step back, to recognize our own humanity, and to forgive ourselves for our imperfections. Think about it this way: when a friend makes a mistake, you're likely to offer them encouragement and support. You remind them that everyone stumbles sometimes and that failure is just part of growth. But when it comes to ourselves, we often become our harshest critics. We dwell on our missteps, replaying them in our minds, and wonder why we can't be as successful, as talented, or as put together as someone else. Self-compassion asks us to extend the same grace to ourselves that we so freely give to others. Take a modern example. Imagine you bomb a presentation at work. Instead of berating yourself for hours, self-compassion would encourage you to acknowledge the disappointment, but also to remind yourself that you're not defined by this one moment. Maybe you'll reflect on what you can learn from the experience and resolve to prepare differently next time. This isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about treating yourself with the same respect and understanding you'd offer a friend in the same situation. So, how can you start practicing self-compassion in your own life? It begins with noticing when you're being overly critical of yourself. When you catch yourself comparing your journey to someone else's, pause and ask, would I speak to a friend this way? If the answer is no, consider how you might reframe your thoughts. Remind yourself that growth takes time and that your worth isn't tied to how you stack up against others. By embracing self-compassion, you're not just freeing yourself from the thief of joy, you're cultivating a deeper sense of inner peace and resilience. And isn't that what Stoicism is all about? In silence we find clarity. For the Stoics, silence wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a deliberate choice to step away from the distractions that pull us into comparison. Think about it. How often do we allow the chatter of the world to dictate how we feel about ourselves? Whether it's scrolling through social media, overhearing conversations, or even the internal monologue that whispers, "Am I good enough?" These are the moments where comparison thrives, but silence is where we reclaim our focus. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This wasn't just about being a good listener, it was about creating space for reflection. When we quiet the external noise, we give ourselves the chance to listen to our own thoughts, to reconnect with our values, and to remember what truly matters. Silence becomes a shield protecting us from the endless comparisons that drain our joy. Consider this: what if you took a day, or even just an hour, away from social media? No scrolling, no updates, no peeking at what everyone else is doing. Instead, you sit with yourself. You might feel uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort is often where growth begins. In those moments of quiet, you're not comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. You're simply being present with your own journey. So, here's a challenge for you. Where in your life could you carve out some silence? Maybe it's turning off notifications for a while, taking a walk without your phone, or just sitting quietly with your thoughts. What might you discover about yourself when you're not distracted by the noise of the world? Silence isn't just empty space, it's where we find the strength to focus on our own path, free from the weight of comparison. How can we turn comparison into connection? This question lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy when it comes to community. Instead of seeing others as rivals or benchmarks for our own success, the Stoics invite us to view them as allies in our journey toward growth and understanding. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "We are members of one great body, planted by nature to care for one another." This idea of shared humanity reminds us that our well-being is deeply intertwined with the well-being of those around us. Think about it. When we compare ourselves to others, we often focus on what we lack. But when we shift our perspective toward connection, we start to see opportunities for collaboration and mutual support. For example, instead of competing with a colleague for recognition, imagine working together on a project where both of you can shine. This kind of cooperation not only strengthens relationships but also fosters a sense of shared purpose and achievement. Stoicism teaches us that true fulfillment doesn't come from outshining others but from contributing to the greater good. By embracing this mindset, we can transform the energy we once spent on comparison into acts of kindness and solidarity. Take a moment to reflect. How can you nurture supportive relationships in your own life? Are there ways you can collaborate rather than compete, lifting others up as you grow alongside them? When we focus on connection over comparison, we not only enrich our own lives but also create a ripple effect of positivity within our communities. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of Stoicism and forms the foundation of letting go. When we cling to comparisons, whether it's measuring ourselves against others or holding onto past regrets, we're essentially chaining ourselves to things we cannot control. And that weight, that burden, drains us of the joy we could be experiencing right now. Think about it this way: when you compare your life to someone else's, you're borrowing their story and trying to make it your own. But their journey, their achievements, their struggles, none of that belongs to you. It's like carrying a backpack filled with someone else's belongings. It's heavy, unnecessary, and it keeps you from moving forward. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from releasing these attachments, from understanding that the only thing you truly own is your own mind and how you choose to respond to life. Let's take a modern example. Imagine someone who constantly dwells on a past mistake, a missed opportunity at work, a failed relationship, or even a regretful decision. They replay it in their mind over and over, comparing their current life to what could have been. But here's the thing, that moment is gone. The more they hold on to it, the more it distracts them from the present, from the opportunities right in front of them. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it didn't happen. It means accepting it, learning from it, and choosing to focus on what you can do now. So, what about you? What are you holding onto that's keeping you stuck in comparison? Is it the fear of not being good enough, the frustration of not having what someone else has, or maybe it's the weight of past choices that no longer serve you? The Stoic practice of letting go invites you to examine these attachments and ask yourself, is this helping me grow? Is this bringing me peace? If the answer is no, then it's time to release it. Because joy isn't found in clinging to what you can't control, it's found in embracing what you can. Letting go isn't easy. It takes courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to trust in your own path. But when you do, you'll find that life becomes lighter, more open, and full of possibilities, and that's where true joy begins. What if your purpose was your compass, guiding you through life's challenges without constantly looking over your shoulder at what others are doing? The Stoics believed that having a clear sense of purpose is one of the most powerful antidotes to the trap of comparison. When you're grounded in what truly matters to you, the need to measure yourself against others fades away. Instead of chasing external validation or competing with someone else's achievements, you focus on aligning your actions with your own values and goals. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested." In other words, when we live with intention, when we direct our energy toward what truly matters, we find meaning that transcends comparison. Purpose gives us a sense of direction, a reason to move forward, and most importantly, a way to measure success on our own terms. Take, for example, the story of a musician who chose to write songs for small, intimate audiences rather than chasing mainstream fame. While others in their field were vying for chart-topping hits and social media clout, this musician found fulfillment in connecting deeply with their listeners. Their purpose wasn't to outshine others, but to create something authentic and meaningful. By staying true to their vision, they didn't just avoid the trap of comparison, they thrived in their own way. So what about you? What gives your life a sense of meaning? Is it your work, your relationships, or perhaps a creative pursuit? The Stoics would encourage you to reflect on this deeply. When you're clear about your purpose, the noise of comparison quiets down. You stop worrying about who's ahead or behind you and start focusing on the path that's uniquely yours. Purpose isn't just a shield against comparison, it's the foundation of a fulfilling life. And the best part, it's something you can cultivate starting today. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of Stoic reflection. It's about pausing, looking inward, and asking yourself, who am I and who do I want to become? For the Stoics, this practice wasn't just a philosophical exercise, it was a daily ritual, a way to cut through the noise of external pressures and align with what truly matters. Reflection, in its essence, is a tool for clarity. When we take the time to examine our thoughts, actions, and motivations, we create a space to untangle ourselves from the endless cycle of comparison. Think about it. How often do we measure our worth against someone else's achievements, possessions, or even their social media highlight reel? Reflection helps us step back and ask, are these comparisons serving me or are they stealing my peace? One powerful way to practice reflection is through journaling. Imagine sitting down at the end of the day, opening a notebook and writing down your thoughts. What went well? What didn't? What lessons can you take from today? This isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-awareness. By putting your thoughts on paper, you create a mirror that reflects your true self, not the version you think others want to see. Journaling allows you to track your progress, celebrate your growth, and identify areas where you might be falling into the trap of comparison. But reflection doesn't have to be limited to writing. It can be as simple as a quiet moment of meditation, a walk in nature, or even a conversation with a trusted friend. The key is to create a habit of looking inward regularly. When we do this, we start to see that our value isn't determined by how we stack up against others, but by how authentically we live according to our own values. So, take a moment to consider, how could reflection help you break free from comparison? What would it feel like to let go of the need to measure yourself against others and instead focus on becoming the person you truly want to be? The Stoics believed that true joy comes from within, and reflection is the compass that guides us back to that inner source. Acceptance is the antidote to comparison. It's the moment we stop measuring our lives against someone else's and start embracing reality as it is. The Stoics believed that much of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them, our refusal to accept what we cannot change. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, put it this way: accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. In other words, life unfolds as it will, and our power lies not in controlling every outcome but in how we respond to what's given. Think about it this way: when we compare ourselves to others, we're essentially rejecting our own reality. We're saying, this isn't good enough, or I should be further along. But Stoic acceptance invites us to pause and ask, what if this is enough? What if I'm exactly where I need to be right now? It's not about giving up or settling, it's about redirecting our energy. Instead of wasting time and emotional energy on what we can't control, we focus on what we can change, our own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. Here's an example. Imagine you're struggling with a personal limitation, like not being as naturally talented in a skill as someone you admire. Comparison might lead you to feel inadequate, even resentful. But acceptance allows you to say, this is where I am right now. I may not be the best, but I can still improve, still grow. That shift in mindset from resistance to acceptance frees you to take meaningful action rather than getting stuck in frustration. So, what's something in your life that you need to accept? Maybe it's a circumstance you can't change, a trait you've always wished were different, or a past mistake you keep revisiting. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it, it simply means you stop fighting it. And in that space of acceptance, you'll find clarity, focus, and the strength to move forward. There's a beautiful quote from Seneca that captures the essence of Stoic simplicity. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. This idea reminds us that true wealth isn't about accumulation, it's about contentment. When we simplify our lives, we strip away the unnecessary noise, the distractions, and the endless chase for more. And in doing so, we create space to focus on what truly matters. Think about the modern practice of decluttering. It's not just about cleaning out a closet or organizing a desk. It's about letting go of the things that no longer serve us, the possessions that weigh us down, and the mental clutter that keeps us stuck in cycles of comparison. When we simplify our surroundings, we often find that our minds follow suit. we begin to see clearly, to appreciate what we have, and to stop measuring ourselves against others. The Stoics believed that a simple life is a life of freedom. When we're not constantly chasing the next big thing, we're no longer prisoners to comparison. Instead of looking sideways at what others have, we can look inward and ask ourselves, what do I truly value? What brings me joy? What is enough? So, how can we embrace this practice of simplicity in our own lives? It might start with something small, clearing out a drawer, setting boundaries around screen time, or saying no to commitments that drain us. The key is to focus on what aligns with our values and let go of the rest. When we do this, we're not just simplifying our lives, we're reclaiming our peace of mind and our ability to find joy in the present moment. What if we saw comparison not as a source of fear, but as an opportunity to grow? This shift in perspective is at the heart of Stoic courage. When we compare ourselves to others, it's natural to feel small, inadequate, or even envious. But the Stoics teach us that these feelings don't have to control us. Instead, we can choose to face them head-on, using courage as our guide. Courage in Stoicism isn't about being fearless, it's about acting despite fear. It's the willingness to confront our insecurities and vulnerabilities, even when every instinct tells us to run or hide. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. In other words, it's through facing challenges like the sting of comparison that we grow stronger and more resilient. Take the story of someone like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic thinker. Despite his immense power, he often felt the weight of comparison, whether to his predecessors, his peers, or even his own ideals. Yet, instead of letting these comparisons paralyze him, he used them as fuel for self-improvement. In his private writings, he reminded himself to focus on what he could control: his own actions, thoughts, and character. This is the essence of Stoic courage, recognizing that while we can't control how others perceive us or what they achieve, we can control how we respond. So, how can we cultivate this kind of courage in our own lives? Start by reframing comparison as a mirror, not a measuring stick. When you notice yourself comparing, pause and ask, what can I learn from this? What strengths or qualities do I admire in this person, and how can I develop those in myself? Instead of shrinking in the face of comparison, use it as a chance to reflect, grow, and take deliberate action. Courage also means being kind to yourself. It's easy to beat yourself up when you feel like you're falling short, but remember, growth isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Every time you choose to face comparison with courage, you're building mental resilience one step at a time. So, the next time you find yourself caught in the trap of comparison, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this is an opportunity, not a threat. With courage as your ally, you can transform comparison from a thief of joy into a teacher of strength. Epictetus once said, we should always be asking ourselves, is this something that is or is not in my control? This simple yet profound question is at the heart of mindfulness, a practice that Stoics have long used to anchor themselves in the present moment. When we're fully present, we're less likely to fall into the trap of comparison because our attention isn't scattered on what others are doing or achieving. Instead, we focus on what's right in front of us, what we can control here and now. Mindfulness, in its essence, is about awareness. It's about noticing when your mind starts to wander into the realm of comparison, measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel, and gently bringing it back to the present. Think of it like this: your mind is like a boat on a vast ocean. Without mindfulness, it drifts wherever the currents of distraction take it, toward envy, resentment, or self-doubt. But with mindfulness, you take hold of the rudder and steer yourself back to calm waters. A modern example of this is mindful breathing. It's a simple yet powerful technique. When you feel the pull of comparison creeping in, pause and take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs and then slowly exhale. This small act grounds you in your body and reminds you that the only moment you truly have is this one. It's not about clearing your mind completely. That's nearly impossible, but about noticing where your thoughts are going and choosing to refocus on what's real and tangible. So, how does this help with comparison? When you're mindful, you become more aware of the stories your mind tells you, like the belief that someone else's success diminishes your own. You start to see these thoughts for what they are, just thoughts, not truths. And in that space of awareness, you have the power to let them go. You realize that comparing yourself to others is like trying to measure the ocean with a teaspoon. It's pointless, exhausting, and ultimately unfulfilling. Take a moment to reflect. How often do you find yourself scrolling through social media only to feel a pang of inadequacy? What if, instead of letting those feelings take over, you paused and brought yourself back to the present? What if you reminded yourself that your journey is your own, and no amount of comparison can change that? Mindfulness isn't about perfection, it's about practice. And with each moment of awareness, you take one step closer to freeing yourself from the thief of joy. Now, as we bring this exploration to a close, let's revisit the core Stoic principles that help us reclaim joy from the grip of comparison. At the heart of Stoicism lies the practice of detachment, not in the sense of disconnecting from the world, but in freeing ourselves from the need to measure our worth against others. When we detach from the endless cycle of comparison, we create space to focus on what truly matters, our own growth, values, and purpose. Gratitude, too, plays a vital role. By shifting our attention to what we already have, rather than what we lack or what others possess, we cultivate a sense of abundance. This isn't about ignoring ambition or self-improvement. It's about finding contentment in the present moment while still striving toward our goals. And then there's self-awareness, the cornerstone of Stoic wisdom. When we truly understand ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, and our unique path, we stop looking outward for validation and start building a life rooted in authenticity. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most revered voices, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This simple yet profound reminder speaks directly to the struggle with comparison. Joy isn't something we find in the achievements or possessions of others. It's something we cultivate within ourselves. When we stop chasing external validation and focus instead on our inner world, we unlock a deeper, more enduring sense of fulfillment. Comparison, as we've seen, is a thief. It distracts us from our own journey, pulling us into a never-ending race where the finish line keeps moving. But by embracing Stoic principles, detachment, gratitude, and self-awareness, we can reclaim our joy and refocus on what truly matters. These practices aren't just philosophical ideas, they're tools for living a more intentional, fulfilling life. So, as we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a challenge. Take one small step today to apply these Stoic principles in your own life. Maybe it's pausing to reflect on what you're grateful for, or reminding yourself that your worth isn't tied to someone else's success. Whatever it is, let it be a step toward living more authentically and joyfully. And if this resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. How do you deal with comparison in your own life? What Stoic practices have helped you find joy? Let's continue this conversation together. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on living a Stoic-inspired life. Thanks for watching, and remember, the joy you seek is already within.